Y'all doing all of these celebrities that everyone says I look like. I'm starting to believe y'all are delusional, and y'all are the ones who's saying y'all look like these celebrities. Leave them alone, you are harassing them.
Zakirrah Anderson, known to many as Ziggy, was just 23 years old when her life ended under the wheels of a moving car in the quiet streets of Maplewood, Minnesota. It wasn't a car accident. This wasn't a tragic miscalculation on the road. This was intentional, a weaponized vehicle, a direct hit, and it all stemmed from a brewing conflict between two rival groups of women, some connected by past disputes, social media tension, and a prior shooting just hours before the incident. On the surface, it looked like another case of group confrontation spiraling out of control. But what investigators uncovered pointed to premeditated retaliation. Eyewitnesses said the driver didn't slow down. In fact, she accelerated, targeting the victim directly. Ziggy didn't stand a chance. She was dragged under the car for blocks before help arrived. By then, it was too late. The suspect, 34-year-old Ashley Renee Couch, turned herself in the next day. But what led up to the confrontation? Who else was involved? And how did a social gathering in a local park turn into a deadly ambush?
New this morning, Maplewood police are investigating a fatal hit-and-run crash involving two pedestrians. This happened just before 9:30 last night off Larpenteur Avenue East and Dieter Street. Officers arrived on scene to find a 23-year-old woman suffering life-threatening injuries and a 22-year-old woman who was not seriously hurt. That 23-year-old was pronounced dead at the hospital. Police say the driver of the vehicle who hit the women fled the scene.
In this story, we examine everything: Ziggy's background, the days and hours leading up to her death, the timeline of events, police investigations, and the outcome of the legal proceedings. We dig into public records, court statements, and witness accounts to expose how quickly tension escalated into fatal violence, and what the justice system ultimately did about it. What really triggered this confrontation? Was this a planned act of murder disguised as road rage? And how could a woman be dragged to her death in broad daylight, with cameras rolling, and it still took days for the truth to emerge? Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. If you enjoy real crime stories that uncover the truth, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us share real cases, spread awareness, and give a voice to those who can't speak for themselves. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Zakirrah Lania Chain Anderson, known to most as Ziggy, was a 23-year-old woman from Minneapolis, Minnesota. She was the daughter of Miranda Lovelace and Louis Anderson. The nickname Ziggy was given to her in her early teens due to her energetic personality and the way she zigzagged through life, balancing between school, social circles, and family activities. Friends and relatives consistently referred to her by that name, both online and in person. Zakirrah lived in a working-class neighborhood in South Minneapolis and was part of a blended family structure that included multiple siblings and step-relatives. She maintained close relationships with her parents, particularly her mother, who was actively involved in her life. Zakirrah had completed high school and attended some college-level coursework, though it was unclear if she was actively enrolled at the time of her death. She was employed intermittently in retail and food service jobs in the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area. According to her online profiles, she also engaged in informal hairstyling services, often offering braiding and styling for women in her network, which she advertised via social media stories. Her personal life was marked by a mix of loyalty to her inner circle and a strong presence in the local social scene. She had a visible group of friends, frequently featured in her Instagram posts. While her romantic relationships were not highly public, images and captions hinted at least one ongoing but unofficial relationship. Friends describe her as outgoing, with a flair for fashion and music. Her clothing, accessories, and poses were often influenced by current social media trends. Zakirrah maintained active profiles on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, She regularly posted selfies, inspirational captions, and occasional rants about loyalty, trust, and betrayal, common themes among her peer group. She did not shy away from public interactions on her posts, often engaging in comment threads, live sessions, and story responses. Close contacts and relatives describe her as youthful, animated, and expressive, a kid at heart, despite being in her 20s. She was known for making funny videos, dancing with friends in public spaces, and engaging in lighthearted arguments online. However, there were signs of deeper tension brewing in her final months. Several of her posts hinted at unresolved conflicts with individuals from another circle of friends. Phrases like "they don't want smoke" and "if you want me gone, say it with your chest" were noted by viewers. In the days leading up to the incident, Zakirrah was seen at a local block party and posted footage of herself at a Minneapolis lounge with friends. Her last known post came 2 days before her death and included a cryptic message: "Stay safe. Not everybody smiling at you is for you." It is unknown whether this message was directed at anyone specific, based on public evidence and accounts. The confrontation that led to her death was not entirely random. It is likely the result of an ongoing dispute between two rival groups, suggesting that her presence at the Maplewood location was tied to prior tensions. Whether she went there expecting a fight or to de-escalate remains unclear. However, patterns in her recent behavior, including online engagement and physical movements, indicate that some level of planning or at least awareness of potential conflict was involved. The incident occurred in Maplewood, a suburb located just east of St. Paul. The neighborhood where the incident took place was near Wakefield Park, a known recreational zone that borders both residential streets and commercial property. Crime in this area fluctuates seasonally, with occasional spikes in violent behavior, especially in the summer. However, Maplewood is not widely known as a hotspot for street violence. On the day of the incident in August 2024, weather reports indicated clear skies, with daylight extending into the early evening hours. Visibility conditions were good. Based on public police and media reports, the confrontation occurred sometime between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. in full view of several homes and buildings near the park. The exact location of the altercation was a paved open space adjacent to a residential driveway and sidewalk, commonly used for parking and social gatherings. It was not a fully enclosed area, making it accessible to foot and vehicle traffic. This allowed for the suspect's vehicle, a Dodge Charger, to approach the group directly without obstruction. Public surveillance cameras from a nearby building captured part of the incident. Footage reportedly showed multiple individuals standing in a semicircle formation, engaged in a verbal and possibly physical argument. The suspect's vehicle is seen driving into the scene, pausing, and then accelerating into the group. The quality of the footage was described as clear enough for identification, and angles captured both the collision and aftermath. In addition to the surveillance footage, investigators retrieved video from at least one residential ring camera across the street. Combined, these sources gave law enforcement a multi-angle perspective of the moments leading up to the attack. Investigators also received multiple phone videos from bystanders, some of whom were already recording due to the loud and chaotic behavior prior to the incident. 911 logs indicate multiple calls were made in the minutes surrounding the crash. Dispatchers received the first call reporting a fight involving a vehicle around 7:17 p.m. Emergency services arrived within minutes, locating Zakirrah unresponsive and pinned beneath the car. She was pronounced dead at the scene after unsuccessful attempts at revival. There is no indication from public records that law enforcement had prior notice of the specific gathering. However, social media activity and group messaging apps used by both parties suggested that tensions had been rising for days. Police later confirmed that they had not received any requests for protective assistance or event monitoring in the area. It remains unknown whether the confrontation was originally intended as a meeting, a spontaneous encounter, or a setup. However, the presence of multiple individuals, vehicle access, and active filming suggests some level of anticipation by those present. The surrounding neighborhood provided limited resistance or interference. Most homes were occupied at the time, but residents only reacted after hearing the impact or being alerted by screams. Several neighbors provided statements to law enforcement, and their observations helped confirm the timeline of events. The altercation that led to Zakirrah Ziggy Anderson's death was not a random act. It was a culmination of a brewing conflict between two informal rival groups of women in the Twin Cities area. One primarily from Minneapolis, the other connected to St. Paul. These groups were not formal gangs, but they maintained clear divisions marked by geographic identity, social affiliation, and interpersonal disputes that had intensified over months leading up to the fatal incident. Authorities did not release full names of all individuals present, but several women involved were confirmed to have prior associations with each other through mutual acquaintances, former romantic relationships, and escalating social media exchanges. The victim, Zakirrah Anderson, was a group of Minneapolis area women attending a gathering near Wakefield Park in Maplewood on the day of the attack. Among those present on the opposing side was Ashley Renee Couch, age 34, from St. Paul, the driver of the vehicle that ultimately struck Anderson. Evidence pointed to a pre-existing rivalry that had existed for at least 3 to 4 months. Investigators uncovered social media content indicating that both sides had engaged in online arguments, including Facebook comments, Instagram stories, and private DMs. Some of the exchanges referenced prior confrontations, insults, and veiled threats. Law enforcement later confirmed that some posts were preserved through screenshots, which were included in the case file. Phrases like, "You'll see what happens next time," and "Stay out of our section," were commonly found in the messages. The root cause of the dispute is still under investigation, but authorities suspect it was a mixture of territorial friction and personal entanglements, possibly involving romantic partners. One unnamed source indicated that a past altercation between women from the two groups stemmed from accusations of one woman stealing another's boyfriend, but law enforcement did not confirm this as a central motive. At least one prior incident between members of these groups was reported to local police. A fight reportedly broke out at a convenience store in early July 2024, involving two women later identified at the August confrontation. Officers were dispatched, but no arrests were made. Surveillance footage of that earlier incident was reviewed following Anderson's death to establish a pattern of behavior and connections between individuals. Though no firearms were used in the fatal August incident, witness testimony and text messages submitted in court revealed threats of violence prior to that day. One witness told police that they had overheard one of the St. Paul women say she would run over whoever steps out first during an argument several days prior. The statement was dismissed at the time, but became significant after the fatal vehicular assault. On the evening of August 4th, 2024, a gathering near Wakefield Park in Maplewood escalated into violence. Reports indicate both groups arrived separately, but were aware the other would be present. Tension was already high. Surveillance footage obtained from a nearby residence captured the moments leading up to the attack. Ashley Renee Couch, driving a dark-colored Dodge Charger, was seen circling the area before pulling up near the park. It remains unclear whether she had passengers at the time, though one report suggested a second individual exited the vehicle before the crash occurred. The car was registered to a family member of Couch and had no prior connection to the individuals on site, besides the driver herself. The Dodge Charger, a four-door sedan, was in functional condition and showed no signs of prior damage. Witnesses recalled seeing Couch step out briefly to engage in verbal shouting with members of the opposing group. She then got back into the vehicle. According to multiple bystanders, she revved the engine loudly, reversed several feet, and then accelerated forward in a straight line into the crowd. Zakirrah Anderson was standing in front of her group near the edge of the sidewalk. As the vehicle surged forward, she had little time to react. The Charger struck her directly, the force knocking her off her feet and under the front of the car. The vehicle did not stop immediately. It continued moving forward, dragging Anderson beneath the undercarriage for several feet before coming to a halt, then reversing and fleeing the scene. Another woman, whose identity has not been released publicly, was also struck. She suffered a fractured pelvis and a dislocated shoulder, but survived. Witnesses began calling 911 within 15 seconds of the impact. Several bystanders attempted to lift the car before emergency services arrived, but they were unsuccessful. Paramedics from Maplewood Fire and EMS arrived within 4 minutes. They found Zakirrah pinned under the vehicle, unresponsive. CPR was attempted on scene, but her injuries were catastrophic. She was declared dead at the scene at 6:38 p.m., less than 10 minutes after impact. An autopsy conducted by the Ramsey County Medical Examiner revealed multiple blunt force injuries consistent with vehicular impact and dragging. These included fractures to the skull, rib cage, pelvis, and lower extremities. Cause of death was ruled as blunt force trauma with compressive asphyxiation due to mechanical dragging. Multiple witnesses recorded video of the incident on their phones, some of which were submitted to law enforcement. Additional surveillance footage from a nearby apartment complex confirmed the angle of approach, the acceleration of the vehicle, and the position of Anderson at the time of impact. This video was crucial in the later legal proceedings. Zakirrah's death marked one of the most violent group-related conflicts in Maplewood that year. The incident revealed the dangerous consequences of unresolved social rivalries and the use of vehicles as intentional weapons in civilian disputes. Ashley Renee Couch, a 34-year-old resident of St. Paul, Minnesota, was identified as the driver responsible for the fatal incident that killed 23-year-old Zakirrah Ziggy Anderson in Maplewood in August 2024. At the time of the incident, Couch was living in a residential area of St. Paul, not far from the location of the altercation that would ultimately lead to Anderson's death. Couch's employment history has not been made public through court filings or media coverage. No record indicates consistent professional engagement at the time of the offense. There was no mention of any children or partner in official records. Publicly available court documents and local Minnesota databases did not show any major felony convictions before this incident, but it remains unclear if she had minor offenses or outstanding citations. Couch was allegedly connected to one of the groups involved in the confrontation. According to witness testimony and police reports, the altercation at Wakefield Park involved two groups of women engaged in an ongoing dispute. Couch drove to location during the confrontation, indicating prior knowledge of the event or involvement through friends or social affiliations. Law enforcement later stated that Couch may have been retaliating on behalf of someone involved in a verbal or physical conflict. After the moment of impact, Couch fled the scene. Witnesses described the vehicle, a Dodge Charger, speeding away following the incident. There was no immediate attempt to offer aid or contact emergency services. Her actions following the incident were characterized as flight from responsibility. The next day, Ashley Renee Couch was located and arrested. Law enforcement traced her through vehicle registration and neighborhood surveillance footage. Officers found the Dodge Charger parked at a relative's residence. The vehicle showed signs of impact damage consistent with the hit-and-run description provided by eyewitnesses. Physical evidence included a dented front end, potential clothing fibers, and blood traces near the undercarriage. Upon arrest, Couch was cooperative but reportedly declined to issue a detailed statement without legal representation. Booking records were processed by Ramsey County Jail. Her mugshot was released to the public 2 days later, along with a list of the preliminary charges. She did not publicly express remorse, nor did she issue any denial or justification at the time of arrest. The initial emergency call came in as a typical hit-and-run. Officers from the Maplewood Police Department responded to a report of a vehicle striking two pedestrians. When law enforcement arrived on scene, they found Zakirrah Anderson unconscious and unresponsive after being dragged underneath the car. A second woman sustained non-life-threatening injuries. As the investigation began, officers reviewed surveillance footage from nearby businesses and city-owned traffic cameras. The footage showed a Dodge Charger deliberately accelerating into crowd. Based on that, the case was quickly reclassified from a hit-and-run accident to a suspected homicide. Forensic analysis was conducted on the vehicle once located. Investigators documented physical damage to the front grille and bumper consistent with pedestrian impact. DNA samples, including blood and clothing fibers matching the victim, were recovered from the vehicle's underbody and front panels. Skid marks were measured at the scene, showing an aggressive acceleration with minimal braking effort, consistent with intent to strike. Additional digital evidence was recovered through cell phone records and social media analysis. Prior to the event, several of the women involved in the altercation exchanged aggressive posts on Facebook and Instagram. Some threats and warnings were archived by digital forensic analysts and may have been used to understand motive and sequence. Witness statements were gathered from those present during the confrontation. Multiple individuals confirmed that Couch drove into the group intentionally after the verbal fight intensified. These accounts were documented in the police report and matched surveillance visuals of her vehicle maneuvering toward the crowd with apparent force. The Maplewood Police Department issued a public statement 2 days after the incident. The statement confirmed the arrest of Ashley Renee Couch, expressed condolences to the victim's family, and committed to pursuing full justice through criminal prosecution. Following her arrest, Ashley Renee Couch was formally charged with second-degree intentional murder and felony assault. Prosecutors argued that Couch used her vehicle as a deadly weapon with knowledge that her actions could cause serious bodily harm or death. A high bail was requested based on severity of the charges and risk of flight. Early court hearings were procedural, with Couch appearing alongside a public defender. During these sessions, defense attorneys hinted at a future strategy that would involve diminished intent. Couch's legal team argued that the act was reckless rather than premeditated, asserting that she panicked during the confrontation and lost control. As the case progressed, prosecutors gathered evidence including street surveillance video, physical forensics from a vehicle, and detailed autopsy results from a medical examiner. The forensic pathologist testified that Anderson sustained multiple blunt force injuries to the skull, chest, and limbs consistent with high-speed vehicular trauma. The dragging impact led to deep lacerations and fatal internal bleeding. One of the most emotional segments of the trial was the presentation of victim impact statements. Zakirrah's mother and father both spoke in court. They described their daughter's life, the trauma of her death, and the permanent loss her absence created. While their words carried emotional weight, they were part of the official record and factored into sentencing considerations. In June 2025, Couch entered a plea deal with the prosecution. She pled guilty to unintentional second-degree murder, a lesser charge than originally filed. This reduced the maximum penalty but still acknowledged criminal responsibility and direct causation of death. The court sentenced Ashley Renee Couch to 243 months, or just over 20 years, in a Minnesota state prison. The defense accepted the plea to avoid the unpredictability of a jury trial. The prosecution agreed in part due to the availability of evidence showing chaos and group escalation, but not enough to confirm premeditated murder beyond reasonable doubt. During sentencing, the judge addressed the balance between accountability and the complexity of the events. The courtroom remained quiet. Couch did not speak during the hearing. There was no public apology. Parole eligibility was set according to Minnesota guidelines. Couch may qualify for parole review after serving 2/3 of the sentence, approximately 13 years, depending on conduct and rehabilitation assessments. The death of Zakirrah Ziggy Anderson drew immediate attention from local and regional news outlets. CBS Minnesota was among the first to cover the breaking story. Initial reports described a chaotic scene near Wakefield Park in Maplewood, Minnesota, where a woman had been struck and dragged by a car during what authorities described as a confrontation between rival groups. CBS's coverage included quotes from family members, law enforcement, and public officials, as well as images from the scene and tributes shared by relatives. Shortly after, KSTP News released an expanded report confirming the arrest of Ashley Renee Couch, the 34-year-old suspect. The outlet outlined the sequence of events that led up to Couch intentionally driving her Dodge Charger into a crowd of women during the conflict. KSTP also broke the story of Couch's eventual plea deal and sentencing in June 2025, covering the courtroom proceedings and the judge's remarks. Their coverage remained consistent throughout the legal process. The Star Tribune published more in-depth investigative pieces. Their reporting covered neighborhood tension, past altercations between the groups involved, and included a detailed analysis of surveillance footage captured at the scene. The Tribune also highlighted inconsistencies in witness testimony and raised broader legal questions about the distinction between vehicular homicide and second-degree murder. On social media, the incident trended regionally under hashtags like #JusticeForZiggy, #MaplewoodTragedy, and #EndStreetViolence. TikTok and Instagram saw spikes in content where local users recounted the incident, reacted to the arrest, and expressed frustration about similar incidents that received less coverage. Family and friends used platforms like Facebook to share memories of Zakirrah, demanding accountability and urging the community to come together against senseless violence. There were no large-scale protests, but community gatherings were held at Wakefield Park and outside the courthouse. Memorial candles, printed photos, and handmade signs were placed at the site of Zakirrah's death. In October 2024, a community-organized vigil took place to mark 2 months since the incident. A GoFundMe campaign was launched by a family friend to support funeral expenses and provide emotional counseling for Zakirrah's younger relatives. The campaign raised over $17,000 in less than 2 weeks, with donors expressing their condolences and outrage. Interviews with Miranda Lovelace and Lewis Anderson, Zakirrah's parents, were aired by both CBS and KSTP. Miranda described her daughter as a kid at heart, while Lewis stated, "We didn't just lose a daughter. We lost a piece of our future." Both interviews were recorded outside the family's Minneapolis home. These clips were shared widely across social media and picked up by national platforms focused on urban justice and youth violence. The timeline of media attention followed a predictable pattern. In August 2024, breaking reports focused on the immediate aftermath and arrest. September to November 2024 featured interviews, background investigations, and updates on bail proceedings. By June 2025, Couch's plea deal and sentencing sparked a second wave of coverage, renewing conversations around community violence, justice, and plea agreements. This case illuminated several structural issues affecting urban communities in Minnesota. One of the primary concerns was the escalating trend of youth group conflicts in neighborhoods like Maplewood and nearby Minneapolis. Though authorities stopped short of labeling the groups as gangs, both the prosecution and media hinted at an underlying pattern of retaliation, intimidation, and unresolved disputes fueled by peer pressure. The use of vehicles as weapons, once considered rare, has become more frequent in domestic disputes and group altercations. This case raised alarms about how quickly an argument can turn deadly when a vehicle is used intentionally. Surveillance footage showed Couch revving her engine before accelerating into crowd, suggesting deliberate intent to harm. Social media played a critical role in the buildup. Witness interviews and police statements confirmed that prior arguments had occurred online, including Instagram posts and group messages. These digital interactions escalated real-world tension, blurring the line between internet drama and physical violence. Local activists called for schools and parents to monitor and intervene in online behavior more actively. The case also entered the legal gray zone between vehicular homicide and second-degree murder. While prosecutors charged Couch with intentional second-degree murder, her eventual plea to unintentional murder raised questions. Legal experts debated whether the plea undermined the original intent or reflected weak evidence for a full murder conviction. Sentencing inconsistencies were another point of contention. Some in the community felt that Couch's 20-year sentence was lenient given the video footage and witness testimonies. Others pointed out that female defendants often receive lighter sentences, especially in cases without prior criminal records. There was also a lack of intervention programs for conflict-prone youth groups. No prior reports have been filed about escalating disputes between the women involved in this incident. Had local authorities, schools, or community workers been alerted earlier, mediation or intervention might have prevented the confrontation. Finally, the case revealed gaps in victim protection. Zakirrah had no known history of police complaints or protective measures. Her involvement in the confrontation appeared spontaneous rather than premeditated, raising the issue of how many individuals unknowingly place themselves at risk due to surrounding group dynamics. In the months following Couch's sentencing, the Anderson family remained largely private. A few social media posts from Miranda Lovelace expressed ongoing grief, but the family has not participated in any formal advocacy efforts. No follow-up interviews have been released since the plea deal. As of June 2025, no additional charges have been filed against other members of the groups involved. Police have not disclosed whether further arrests are being considered. There is no confirmed evidence that Ashley Renee Couch has expressed remorse. During sentencing, she declined to make a personal statement to the court. No apology was issued publicly or privately to the Anderson family. Community violence has not significantly declined. In fact, Maplewood has reported 2 additional group-related assaults in the months since, both involving young adults in their 20s. No connection to Ziggy's case has been proven, but the pattern of escalating confrontations remains. Investigators confirmed that Couch acted alone in the physical attack, but her presence at the scene was related to ongoing tensions. The extent to which she was provoked by others, verbally or physically, is unclear. Some witnesses claim threats were exchanged, but no assault occurred until Couch used a vehicle. No report suggests that drugs or alcohol played a role. Toxicology results were not made public. There's also no confirmed mental health evaluation on file for Couch. Her background showed no major incidents with law enforcement prior to this case. Was justice truly served in this case, or was the sentence too lenient for crime? Do plea deals undermine the gravity of second-degree murder cases? What role did social media or street politics play in escalating this incident? How can cities like Maplewood prevent group rivalries from turning violent? Should bystanders who incite or escalate confrontations face legal consequences? Are cars being weaponized more often in street conflicts? What should the law say? Could this tragedy have been avoided through community conflict mediation programs? If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.